Hello everyone, welcome to This Week in Tyranny. It's the most hardcore news show on earth. Thank you for joining me. My name is Konrad Rogoz. This is episode 101. I'm coming to you here on November 10th, Sunday, 2024. Thanks for joining me. This is the new format. Welcome to the new format of the show, meaning I'm going to shorten the episodes, hopefully, and separate it into two videos. Well, the show stays, basically, right? But the deeper dive stuff, the psychological stuff, is going to be separate as a whole standalone video. And that way I kill two birds with one stone. I make my... it gets many things done. I make the videos shorter, which makes them easier to watch. If people want to just hear about the topic, it's going to be that. And then the things I want to expand on, how it connects... to the other parts of life, that's going to be a standalone presentation. Also, it creates more of my work is going to get out there that's not tied into some kind of world event or political thing. Like, for example, this episode is going to be about elections, right? You already know this. It is the post-election manic-depressive response. Subtitle: Symptoms of a Fractured Mind. So a lot of that, I don't want to, throw everything into the same bag. Some people don't care for elections, like me, right? I'm just talking about it because there's a lot to talk about. And this way I'm separating those two things. So we'll see if I can pull it off, right? It's a lot of work. In a way, it's like I'm trying to split it down the middle in half, but it is two separate videos. It'll be a challenge, so I'm looking forward to the challenge. This is really like a new season of This Week in Tyranny. I'm thinking episodes 101 to 200 are going to be like this format, where you're going to have two separate videos. Another reason, bringing me to my next thing, is the last episode was removed. Episode 100 was removed from YouTube, taken down by YouTube for medical misinformation. In that episode, I talked about many things, including, you know what I talked about. Anyway, that has to do with medical things. I'm going to steer clear of any kind of hot words that may trigger that. Actually, this episode probably will not be uploaded to YouTube until later in the week, or maybe 2 weeks is my suspension. That brings me to important point I want to make, is that I hope everybody knows YouTube is not the main platform that my content is on. Like, it's not the database where all my stuff is hosted. I have my website, truthandlaw.com, but really the base, for where all my work is and could be seen, that I think is the best place to see it, is on the One Great Work Network, onegreatworknetwork.com. Where you could find me there, or / Konrad Rogoz is my name. Of course, I'm on BitChute, I'm on Odyssey, and they've never taken me down. So there you go. Let's get into the topic this week. Of course, Donald Trump won the election. That has resulted in a manic-depressive response. We've got a celebration, an exaltation, celebration by the side who are happy that this occurred, and then you have seemingly a total depression, a disaster, a tragic feeling, almost a mourning among the people who cannot stand Donald Trump. For others, for a lot of us, the reaction has been mixed, right? There are nice things about this, and then there's there's a bad reaction to this. But I'm talking really about the most of the population, not us in the freedom alternative community. We're talking about most people. How are they reacting to this? And this bipolar response is totally it's going to show us the underlying issues. Speaking of underlying issues, the big word is polarization. Everybody knows about polarization. We all know that this nation is polarized. People are split. People can't seem to connect with each other. They can't seem to agree with each other. And they can't even pretend to coexist. I know people that since 2020 have actually separated from like long-term friends, separated from people because they were on the other political side, the other ideological side. I think a lot of us can relate to that, or ourselves have split from our families, or know family members who have split because of this, because of how polarized the landscape has gotten, because of not only politics but the pandemic. So they've kind of fused into a single thing. And it is true, there's such a polarization, and the most alarming thing about it is the communication gap. It's a vast ravine now between people who hold opposing viewpoints. And unlike back in the day, and really just not even 100 years back, like more than 5 years ago, unlike 5 years ago plus, today people won't even speak to one another. They're not even going to talk it out. They're not even going to yell at each other. They will yell at each other and then they will cut them off. So I'm not even talking about convincing people to change their politics or their worldview. I'm fully aware that human beings have never been that open-minded ever in human history. So I'm not saying that is the problem. I'm talking about just setting down a line of communication to discuss these related topics or even unrelated topics. What I'm saying is that people are basically doing a hard split, and they won't talk about anything once they know that this is somebody who's on the other side. It is almost like a mental civil war that is occurring. It's that strong of a reaction that it causes. The way to really change somebody's mind about anything, you have to lay down a line of communication. In a way, you can never change somebody's mind. They have to change their own. But if you want to get them to do that, you have to set down a rapport there. You don't go straight to the big lie or the big belief. There's too much resistance there because there are established forces and factors influencing it. You'll never convince somebody that believes something wholeheartedly if you just attack that belief. If you just get in their face and say, for example, regarding elections, voting doesn't do anything, the government is inherently corrupt, whoever gets into levels of administration and policy making, they will ultimately be useless because the entire system is a pyramid scheme, scam. If you approach somebody that way, they might hear you out, but they won't listen to you. For sure, they won't listen to you. To get them to listen, you actually have to back away from the main idea. You have to start working on the smaller ideas that hold up the main idea. It's like a bottle cap, actually. It's in this bottle cap analogy that I'm going to run with. An established political, religious, ideological viewpoint, it's like a well-sealed bottle. You're not going to have any success just yanking at the cap and just peeling it off in one motion. You can with a bottle opener, but that's high-tech stuff. We don't have the psychological, conceptual equivalent of a bottle cap opener. It's a very advanced, hyperdimensional tool. We have that in the physical world, but not when it comes to communicating with people. We don't have a bottle cap opener. That would be something like a full physical, mental, emotional experience, right? It would take that. A full experience like that where you can see yourself being the person that believes in some big idea or belief. You would have to see yourself in the present moment and at the same time see outside of yourself as well, and to see the future and how false your view of everything was. When we talk about hindsight is 2020, it's kind of like that. But it's really like a blend of inspiration and a reality check. It's like cold water in the face, but also like a enlightening experience, an eye-opening experience. And that happens to people. Like, we call those transcendent, transformative experiences, things like that, right? People see the tunnel, they see the light, they have near-death experiences. It's on that level. But we can't just do that to someone. We can't make somebody do that. We don't have the ability to, right? So when we're talking about getting that bottle open, we're talking about peeling the bottle cap, like with a little key or a little nail that we found on the ground. Okay, it's a lot of painstaking work. That's what it takes to convince somebody and expose to them, whether they're on one side of the political spectrum or the other, or if you're outside, you're outside trying to just explain even to a libertarian, right? That is how you're going to do it. So how are you going to do it? You have to work on the supplementary ideas and premises and concepts that are holding up that main idea. You have to peel back the individual sections. So look at the supplementary ideas that are holding up the main idea. The main idea being like, say it's, I vote local. Okay, we're not even going to talk about presidential. I think we all kind of know presidential is kind of a clown show, but voting local is not such a clown show. So let's talk about that. That is the main idea. Someone who believes that voting locally in their community uh, is something that we should spend our time on. Now that's many people, right? So it's not low hanging fruit here. Okay, we're really gonna dive into this. What is the? I would ask. Start with questions, right? It's an inquisitive process. Okay, kind of like Lark and Rose candles in the dark kind of thing. But this is how I see it. I would ask the question: what is the best method to get things done? That's what I would ask that person, because that's what we want to do in politics. We want to get things done. We want to get change accomplished. We want to improve systems. It's a very basic thing. So I would ask, in the workplace, how does it get done? At your work, how does it get done? Does an outsider who doesn't understand your business come in and tell each department how to run it? Because if the answer is yes, and I think for many people the answer is yes, that is how their job looks like. That's the exact same thing driving the business into the ground and making the job harder for you. Like no matter which outsider you choose, you don't actually know the damage that they're doing, because they don't have the actual experience, and they may do 2 or 3 good things, but if they're shooting in the dark, they're going to damage something sooner or later, because they're working in the dark. They don't know what they're administrating. So when a company makes its decisions based on algorithms and analytical processes, does that lead to a better working environment? Yes or no? Or does it cause chaos and confusion due to the lack of cohesion? Because then, of course, the people that are making the decisions, they're micromanaging, they're doing all this stuff in the company, they're not the same ones that actually understand the company. And almost everybody complains about their boss and their manager. When they're right, when we're right to complain about the managers, that is the reason why. It's because it's people that don't actually know what to do, but they're the ones with the power. So people get voted out of office every 2, 4, 6 years, and that's the same thing with the managers and the administrators. They get shuffled around. It shouldn't be that way. It should be somebody who understands, who's proven, who's shown that they have an understanding and they have an investment and an understanding of the entirety, of the spirit of the company, of the goals of the company, its history. But instead we got managers, they get shuffled around. This guy was a CEO here, then he went to go here. Okay, and these guys are, they get hired because of the way their resume looks. So it's not because they're good at the job, it's because the resume or the interview told somebody to hire them, right? There's a formula for everything, right? There's an algorithm for everything. And so then what you get is you have people who have been on the job, they're good for that job, worked 30 years on the job. They're the ones who have to work around them. And despite all the obstacles that the managers put in front of them, these people at the ground level are the ones keeping the company afloat. Now, that's what the regular individual does in society, despite policymakers, despite regulators, despite politicians. And business owners, local business owners, people who are working in these places, working in the companies. It's the people that are holding this whole hierarchy of administration up. Okay, so now we peeled off a little section of the cap. So now let's just move a little bit to the side, right? Leave that alone. Still talking about work. Next question: what kind of person is most productive at work? Like, who actually comes up with the good ideas? Who makes things better? Who makes things easier for everybody? What kind of person is that? Is the question. Like, who is that? Let's describe them. And whatever answer they give, if they actually describe that person, they're going to describe the polar opposite of a political candidate. Like whether it's a president, a senator, a treasurer, a county clerk. They're going to describe something 180 degrees different. It won't be the person getting in front of a crowd and and they're gonna ask for your attention, and they're gonna want to speak to you. The only time they'll ask for your attention to speak to you is when they found a new method of doing things. They've discovered something, they've invented something, right? It's not going to be the person getting in front of a crowd to rally them. It'll be to discuss ideas, discuss what works better. It won't be the person with the loudest voice trying to convince you to get behind their idea, right? They won't be rallying, they won't be motivating. They'll be busy investigating. They'll be testing and implementing the actual ideas, right? And if it does indeed work, they pretty much leave it alone to speak for itself, because they're already off to solve the next problem. If we're going to have leaders, if we're going to have decision makers, it's going to need to be the problem solvers. But the nature of a problem solver is once they solve the problem, they move on to the next problem. They don't make it their life mission to campaign for that. Now, we have whistleblowers doing that. We have people that have dedicated their lives to doing that, and they are doing that. And these are the people we need to be reading their research, reading their books. Unfortunately, they're not the type that make a lot of noise, because they're not about a popularity contest. They're not about garnering a whole lot of support, because they've spent all that time being good at what they do, an actual thing that they do, right? An actual topic, an actual subject, a craft, not at manufacturing support. Okay, they're not the ones with the big smile on their face in front of the cameras asking for your support, your funding, your vote to put them in a decision-making position. It's just not how they work. And people should see these principles at the workplace. They should see it translating to society, but unfortunately we have a difficult time extrapolating that to society and to the world at large. Now hopefully we've gained some ground, right? We peeled that a bit. So let's leave that side of the cap alone, go completely towards the other side. Leave that alone. Don't push too hard, right? You're talking to somebody. Talk about something completely different. From objective results of production, let's talk about feeling. Let's talk about emotions, right? I would ask, would you do it? Would you want to do it? Would you be a politician? Could you picture yourself as a politician, campaigning, giving speeches, sitting through meetings and these back and forth arguments every day? I honestly don't think any of us look at that favorably. Even people that totally support a party, they may even be involved in community councils and city councils. But even then, look at the standout. Look at the popular or influential people at city council, the heads of those councils, those community meetings even. Do you respect them? Serious question, do you see these people as having dignity? And the answers are honestly going to be no, no, and no. So if they are in this weasel-like environment, if their job is so undesirable, how could they ever be expected to get any good work done? When it seems like just going from a regular individual, right, independent individual, to city council, still regular people, just that process seems to have taken some respect and dignity from a person. And I really think this is the case, right? This is not something I can give you scientific proof of, but I've seen a few of these community meetings. I've been in a couple courtrooms. I don't think it's just me, okay? I think a lot of people resonate with that. I think just that process of becoming even slightly political in your community eats away at your character. So what do we expect to happen on the journey from city council to county to district to state to federal? It's political policy making and administration as a whole, politics especially though. It's a multi-stage filtration system, not reverse osmosis. It filters out first the geniuses and inventors, then the productive individuals, then the honest and upstanding people. It's weeding out layers of virtue, of class, of honor, integrity, and dignity. It's weeding them out all the way down to the level where when somebody goes all the way through that political gauntlet, all you have left is this kind of hollow social climber whose only expertise, their only skill, is to hold on and latch on, finding some sort of equilibrium and thrive in an environment that gets nothing done except gain the endorsement of the communities holding them up. Like, that's their skill, is just to keep getting fed, right? To keep getting funding, not actual objective results. So that is that line of questioning. Okay, if you'll be lucky if you can get that done in one sitting, but that's how it would look like. So now you've loosened that cap at multiple points, right? The person you have talking to has actually had to think. They've actually had to question things. They've actually had to apply actual knowledge that they've gained through their own experience and apply that knowledge to an area they haven't really thought of before. And then is when you can approach the main idea. That's when you can grab that cap and try to pop it off. That's the direct confrontational approach. And the direct confrontational approach is valuable and effective, but it needs a setup. It's like the big left hook. It needs a setup. It needs punches to the body. There are feints setting it up, okay? There's supplementary work necessary for it to have an effect. And I'm not saying it's going to work every time. It's not a magical formula. And for the most part, people are still going to stubbornly stick to what they believe. But that is the blueprint. That is how you wake a person up, okay? And not once, like systematically. So this process has to be repeated again and again through spending time with them and having conversations repeatedly over time, repeating the bottle cap process and not forcing it all at once. And that actually works. That actually works. But it is very difficult to connect with someone to get that much time with them. And now, so let's talk about the confrontation. One of the biggest problems of today is that because of this polarization and that lack of communication, the final step, the confrontation in 2024, it only occurs online. Confrontation and intervention doesn't happen online. It doesn't happen in person. It doesn't happen in person. Avoidance happens in person. Confrontation occurs on the internet. And it's the video comments, the social media posts, the group chats, the forums. They're full of confrontation. Plenty of confrontation there. And sadly, that is what confrontation is limited to today. It's just like with dating. Meeting people almost exclusively seems to start online now. And it's the same with strong exchanges of ideas. They occur online. You may see videos of protests, people screaming at each other, clashing face to face, but that's not what I'm talking about. That's not a genuine confrontation or an intervention to get someone to change. That's like when two football teams get together to play against each other, and it's like, and you don't expect the quarterback of the team to take the jersey off and then get off the field or put on the other team's jersey. It's just not how it happens. Obviously, when people are like this with a riot shield separating them, nobody's going to cross over to the other side. That never happens. I'm talking about a real conversation that touches deeply held ideas. I honestly think that only happens between people like from the same religion or a really close-knit culture. There's such a distance between people that to bridge that gap, I really do think it takes something like an understanding of the same God, the same customs, right? I think like a close, like an Amish community or like a very devout Catholic community, if somebody may come up to you and say, hey, what you're doing with this, I really think there's a problem with it, and they can have a heart-to-heart, sincere conversation and actually hear each other out. Any other circumstance, basically, there's somebody shuts off, or they might fight with each other, and then there's a shutdown. There's no chance to really change. But actually, I have had an intervention like that done with me, and this is when I used to drive. I used to work driving a forklift. This is about 5 years ago. So story time here. It's a really unique situation because where I worked and drove a forklift, I didn't know how to drive a forklift before. They taught me, so I came in completely green. But in that environment, very capable, like very skilled forklift operators. That it wasn't where you relax in a warehouse for a couple hours and then you unload a few trucks. It's like once the trucks come in, it is like such high pace. Uh, it's an incredible pace. Never had such a high paced job or experiences even for that long to be that uh, intense. But anyway, you had an interesting environment there where it was like the older Polish guys. You had kind of like you had a Hispanic couple of guys. We had teams, and there was a team, and you worked together. One would unload the trucks, then you had the loaders, and they kind of stick together and they split up the work between each other and help each other out. Really, you're all working together, but then especially you look out for your team. Okay, that's how it was organized. So I was taken in on that team. I actually started out being on another team, but these guys, they saw potential in me, or I guess that they gave it a shot. So they came up to me and they taught me how to drive a forklift for real. And it's these two guys that are family. You know, they've known each other for like 20 years. They've been to jail together. They used to be Latin Kings, so gang members together, growing up together, both changing their life, both family men now. This is who kind of took me in and taught me how to work. Thanks to them, I made more money. I got to actually be good. I got to have a skill that I can fall back on. And of course, I helped them, and we became kind of a super team. Those guys were extremely skilled. Then I got moved to another team, and that was like a super team. But anyway, then there was a time where I was slacking because I was doing drugs. I would do the night shift, and then I would drink two like 24-ounce Heinekens, one at lunch, and then really two of them as my lunch. And then at this time, after I was done working, like 2 a.m., right? So did my 10 hours or so. Then I would go party all night, get some sleep, and then work again. And I was living like that for a while, so obviously my production was slipping. And they saw it. Obviously, you can. I thought I was doing well. I thought I was being responsible, but nothing gets past those guys. And they kind of pulled me aside and had that kind of conversation with me. They said, "Hey, I'm not telling you what to do. I know you have your own life and everything, but it's like, man, you got to get your shit together, man. Like, do you want to be here or not?" Like, it was that kind of conversation. And it's because that group, seeing each other, we had a lot of conversations. They used to say, we spend more time with each other than with our family. This is like a family here. So it takes that kind of really special connection to be able to have those conversations with somebody and they can actually be receptive to them. That was a very unique conversation taking place under unique circumstances. Outside of that, I see very little actual conversation going on between strong minds, strong personalities, if they do not agree. And that is not just polarization, it's a fracture that has occurred. And it occurred a long time ago, but it really is becoming so evident the past 5 years. It's far beyond being polarized. People are just split. It's a separation that has occurred. Because polarization actually is not a bad thing. Again, let's take it out of the conceptual world and then into the physical world. Each natural system is bipolar. That's what gives it its energy. That's where the electromagnetic spectrum gets its potential from, its energy potential. That's how human beings manage energy. That's how we can continue to create and produce, by following the cycle of day and night. Okay, there's a seesaw natural rhythm constantly in the effect in the universe. So of course it bleeds over into the political world, where we have this fragile balance of power always shifting between Republican and Democrat. And actually, the problem with all that is not that people don't feel strongly, or is it that they feel strongly. Let me say that again. The polarization is not the problem. The problem is not that people feel strongly about gay marriage or the border or abortion. They actually don't feel strongly enough. And that may surprise many people, but it's the truth. Or rather, they feel strongly, but they don't care strongly enough. Care is different. You may feel compelled enough to get in somebody's face or unfriend them or walk out of their lives, but caring is more than that. Caring is composed of thinking, feeling, thinking, and acting. My definition of care is not just how much you're preoccupied with something, right? How much you're thinking or feeling about something. Or actually, if you're taking actions, action is not enough. It's what steps you're actually taking towards actual betterment of the thing you care about. And that's my main contention, is that just because you're doing something that you feel is right or you think is right, is it actually causing change for the better for that thing that you claim to care about? And by that definition, there's very little care in the world. I use the example of a jealous, toxic relationship, like the kind where day after day a guy's controlling his girl's life. He's becoming more and more controlling and jealous. He's asking her what she's doing all the time. He doesn't trust her. He's obsessed to the point where she actually no longer feels seen or appreciated by him. He's thinking about her all the time. Now, that's all he thinks about. All he's thinking about is her. He may give her gifts and all this stuff, but he's thinking, who she's with, what is she doing, who she's been with, and then one day, that's not a genuine connection. So one day she's gonna say she's had enough. After all the verbal abuse, right, all the muzzling, all her walking on eggshells, she's gonna have enough of it one day. And when she does and tells him she's done, she's not gonna live like this anymore. Then that guy looks at her wide-eyed directly and say, how could you do that? Like, I care about you so much. That's what people claim, right? That they care about us. That's the reason they grab us and hold us down. He's going to tell her sincerely, I love you so much. I care about you so much. My question is, does he? Are you given that the definition of love and care? Because I don't. Absolutely not. It takes more than passion to earn the title of love. It takes full spectrum commitment and forward motion toward the betterment of what you say you love and care about. And by that definition, that also means you're doing what's best for yourself. That's constructive polarity. So polarity is not bad. This is this is the reason we have polarity. It's two entities standing apart from each other, and by strengthening one, it strengthens the other. This is how things should be. So if people actually care about abortion, whatever side they're on, they would dedicate their time to pursuing a real solution to the problem and not a stopgap solution. So here's what that would look like. Investigate the problem, right? Ask questions first. My question is, why do people want to have sex but not have children? That's a contradiction to me, because those things have a causal relationship, right? Now, I'm not hardcore like that, what I'm saying is, I'm not one of these people that thinks that sex is only to have children and should be only reproductive, but it is something to ask, right? If you're ready for one and not the other, then maybe you need to question your values there. So then, if it's not that, is it because an 18-year-old can't raise a child? Well, why not? If your job isn't paying enough, why isn't it paying enough? If you can't manage that in a career, why not? Why isn't it possible? Are the employees and the employers harshly taxed? This is, now we're getting to the problems. Is the Federal Reserve devaluing the currency? Because if they are, that's a problem. In a real, natural relationship, in a world that's not completely upside down, I don't think you would have to make a absolute choice between doing what you want and raising a child. You can marry those, you can combine those, but we can't do that, especially over money. That's the money thing, and then time, right? If a young couple doesn't have the support of their parents and their extended family, if they don't have that help, why not? Why one of them work? Why can't they work? What has split us up so much as a people? And where is all our time going? Of course, my questions are, the implication here is the problem is authority. The problem is government. The problem is that is criminals taking what is ours away from us. And there are plenty of more questions to ask, like, why does the would-be father leave? Why do people even leave each other? Would this even be a problem if men and women actually valued themselves and valued one another? Again, the point of all these questions is just to demonstrate that the solutions to abortion, all the political issues, it lies in one, psychology, and two, what I already said, is addressing the crime that is somewhere else, somewhere outside of this conversation, but that crime is participating in that problem. And with all the hot button issues, the problem is always that criminals, somewhere along the way, they've gotten into power, and they're making it so that a person has to make a choice between two wrongs because of those unaddressed crimes. You have a choice between two evils is the problem. Either the government is going to put a doctor or a mother in jail if they have an abortion performed, or a woman can freely take the life of a unique being that is a part of her. It's a tragedy either way. Either of those things are a tragedy. It's a destruction of life either way. Because at the end of the day, when a woman gets pregnant and the child is unwanted, unloved by her, even long before birth, tragedy follows no matter what the outcome is. It's like the tragedy has already occurred. The trauma has already happened. The pain of that abandonment, it reverberates throughout the universe, whether that child lives to see 100 years old or doesn't make it to their birthday. That's the true scope of such a conversation, okay? Not what is legal, what is illegal, states versus federal. These are stopgap solutions. And stopgap solutions avoid the problem, and that's the dark side of the coin of polarity. Politics is all based on temporary solutions. They just don't hold up over time. And this is why good people shouldn't be in politics, even very local, especially local. We shouldn't want good people to be in politics. And there's several implications here, right? Like, whatever good gets accomplished, it's going to be quickly reversed in the next administration. And I've already explained why. Because inherently, the type of people that seek these positions, they find these positions of authority. That's one reason. The other reason is that there's an unchecked criminal element influencing social institutions to reinforce the criminals. Okay, they're like, of course, the criminal class, the parasite class, is going to, if they're making money and nobody's taking their money away from them, they're spending that to make it more comfy for themselves, like the banking families controlling currencies to devalue assets. Okay, like the ideological elites, they're spreading self-loathing ideas to disempower people. In a world like that, to do a little bit of good, right, and then when you're done with that, step out of the way for the big evil, to me that does no good. And look, there are good people in government, in police. Okay, a small town mayor doing his best. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But without the care to enact long-term causal change, what is the point? What is the point? I actually think, controversial opinion, I actually think that the lesser of two evils is the worst evil. I'd rather have the big criminal front and center so I know exactly who to aim at. So we know who to aim at. I'd rather have him right there in full clear view, okay? And I'd rather have the good people, the caring, the loving, the able. I'd rather have them here next to us, shoulder to shoulder, so we can develop grassroots systems here amongst ourselves, develop connections of our own, and let this political system rot to the core. That's a long-term solution. But because we are so polarized and charged, it is very difficult to detach from the current that everyone around us seems to be caught in. It's almost magnetic, right? Like, these are magnetic language we're talking about. It's hard to break off from that current. But really, the reason that is so rare and difficult not to fall into politics is because it's an internal, physical, emotional, mental pattern of stimulus response. In other words, it's habit. We're talking about habits and cycles here. It's just like the manic-depressive cycle. And that's why it's called bipolar disorder. It's a disorder. It's a lack of an ability to deal with the everyday swings of life. The swings of everyday life. It's a failure to regulate emotions. And then when that happens, a person swings from the manic phase to the depressive phase, okay? The manic phase, of course, is euphoric, intense bursts of explosive energy, high activity. That is how we feel when we get like the political victory, our party wins, and then they want to get all these things done. Of course, that can't be maintained long term, and then it shifts to the depressive phase, which is cold, it's dark, it's lifeless. There's a lack of stimulation all around, physically, mentally, everything. There's just a lack of stimuli. But as long as there's life, there's breath left in a person. That cannot last forever. And something within them desires change. But it takes directed effort, it takes care to create that change. So unfortunately, the person, in most cases, is unable to do that and break the cycle, and then the manic phase begins again, which is really just a substitute. It's an imitation of that real triumph, that real change that that person craves. And that's what we saw this past week. We see it after every election. But we see it now because it's open emotion and hate and radical honesty is a part of it now. Whereas like 12 years ago, there was a decorum and a professionalism about it all, right? People at least pretended. They pretended that this was a matter of policy and objectives. But now it seems to be openly tribal and unleashed. And in a way that's good. To me, that's good. At least we can see it. It's easy to see that Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, they were like a clash of archetypal symbols. It's been so simplified, really. And this psychological deep dive, it's going to be continued in the supplementary presentation that I'm going to upload with this episode that I'm about to do right after I finish recording this. That should come out at the same time or possibly later in the week. It'll likely be later next week. It's just worth a video of its own to talk about the symbols and how they mirror the parental influences. For this episode, let's take it back to the beginning. Polarization is strength. It could be good, it could be bad. For the human species, it's not the polarity that's damaged us, it's the fundamental fracture that has damaged us. It's the breakdown in communication. We have two separated groups of people, and they're polarized, not even against each other. They're polarized in one aspect of life, and a total lack of polarity in another. Total lack of strength, of force. Some people are wrapped up in work, and then they couldn't care less about their neighbor. Or some people are wrapped up in helping strangers but then neglect themselves. Then we have people polarized when it comes to sports and stuff like that, but then they care nothing about the measures being implemented in their neighborhood, their community, right? Others, they're so concerned with what goes down in Congress, in Parliament, okay, in the news, but then they don't see the children suffering under their own roof. We really have people split. Before we talk about split from each other, the split is really internal. There is no real polarity here anywhere. It's a disorganized mess of a species. And it's because we're lacking connection. It's been fractured and fragmented, and all that is left is entropy. Okay? And that's going to be left a little bit open-ended because I'll talk about entropy in this presentation that I'm about to do. But some final points that I want to kind of throw out here. I may not really complete them, but it needs to be mentioned with this. One thing is wave-particle duality. People really need to think about, of course, wave-particle duality is the nature of energy, of matter. is it a wave? Is it a particle? Light waves, they're waves, but then everything is made up of molecules. So this used to be the old debate of theoretical physics. Then the double slit experiment and more quantum experiments happen, and now we have what is known. This is how we see it now. We describe this as wave particle duality, which is that anything will behave like one thing, but as soon as you study it down to the smallest level and try to find the particle that is actually there, it will follow a wave-like form, and you cannot really nail it down to a single yes or no. You cannot reduce it to an absolute. So with wave particle duality, you cannot determine a particle's location down to an absolute. There's always a wave-like aspect of it, but it seems to change behavior between wave or particle. The way this applies to politics is that it always shifts, and always with political power, the party that's not in power, it always shows its best face. And then when it gains power, has power for a while, that wave becomes a particle. It hardens and it becomes the status quo. And that's when we desire change again. We detest the status quo. That's how it goes. You see so many people saying, I used to be a liberal, now I'm a conservative. If the conservatives take power for a few years, give it a few years, it's going to go the other way around. It's amazing how it shifts. And it's not even that the historical Democratic Party has not had that incremental Fabian socialism behind it. It's not the point. The point is they were right in what they were fighting about, right? They were correct in the spirit of the causes they stood for. They were, of course, incorrect in their implementation, their actual policy. The point is, wave particle duality, their role is going to change. So if you're a member of a party, if you think that party does anything good, they're going to sweep the rug out from under you. And I'll talk more about wave particle duality in the future. Next quick point is individuality versus collectivism. It always amazes me that people seem to be so on one hand they're pro individuality, and then on the other hand they hate that. They don't want a single person to be in power. They don't want imbalance. They want everybody to be balanced. They want all of the communities to be represented. But no matter what it is that we believe, somehow we all get together and we all agree on this one person that we're going to elevate them. So we seem to want to share the pie. We don't believe in imbalance, right? We want justice. We seem to want justice, is what people say. But then election after election, you got hero worship. I see just a lack of a belief in self. Do we really believe in social movements? I guess this would be addressed specifically towards the leftists, right? If there is, if it is such a community thing, if greed is so bad, if selfishness is so bad, and really we need to, we all have equal rights, right? We all need to elevate together. How come we have to reduce it down to I don't have a problem with single person leadership, but it's hero worship. It is seeing somebody as a savior, openly so. The word savior is being thrown around, which is crazy. And really the final point is proxy parent politics. I won't go too deep into this, but I might as well say it. Like, bottom line is, the conservative Republican Party represents the father figure. That's what everybody's happy about. It's like, oh, daddy's come back, Dad has come back. Now everybody's going to fall in line, right? People have even said, like, shown Putin and all the different world leaders, they're falling in line because Trump has won, right? It's so much like, like the father has returned back to the house to restore order in the house. Everything that was going on, the kids were in charge of the house. Now they're going to have to fall in line because daddy's back. And of course, the Democratic Party represents the mother. It's all about nurturing. It's all about caring. Mommy's going to take care of you. You don't need to worry about anything. Oh, you didn't clean up after yourself. It's okay. We'll clean up after you. We'll make sure that nobody goes without care and nourishment. And that is how the system maintains itself. That is the reason for the split, because everybody always is closer to one parent than to the other, which is another problem. Anyway, I won't belabor that one. That really needs to be in the following episode. So the point is, all of these show the fundamental split. These ideas are all related. You can't separate one from the other, and I can't shut down and allow myself to stop learning and growing. We have to heal our trauma. We have to go towards our fears and conquer them. If this is like a walk, if this was like my point is, open the doors that we walk past every day. We take the same path. Our days are very similar for the most part, I think. We do the same things every day, and you may think like, oh, maybe one day I'll do this. Whatever that is, that door that you walk past every day, this day you open it. Today is the day that you open it. I'm sounding like a get-rich-quick scheme self-help guru scammer, but this is good advice. You have something inside you telling you that there's a thing you've been putting off. Do it today. That is the way I'm going to have 2 videos coming out, 2 presentations. It's just, I listened to that instinct, that impulse, and otherwise it never would have gotten done. This episode is not really finished, right? I'm just going to go with it. I'm just going to get it done. Now, we talked a bit about the polarity, right? About the mental cycle. But the split is what I want to focus on. It's a fracture. To heal physical fractures, broken bones, how do you heal it? You take pressure off of it. Then you maximize the blood flow. That is because the blood flow carries the life force. So meaning you want to restore the natural motion of life, increasing forward motion. So when you ice an injury at first, that's what you're doing. You're decreasing swelling, actually. Right? You don't just send more blood that way because it'll be obstructed. You want to remove the obstruction that's restricting blood flow. And then after a while, you put heat on it. You start moving it around. That is when you introduce blood flow after the original rest has brought the swelling down. So it's a 2-part process to heal a fracture. You lay off the activity to rest, and then you crank up the activity to recover. Of course, you actually have to put the bones back together, but that's assuming that it, of course, happens. Then to heal a mental, emotional, and spiritual fracture, it's the same process. We have to turn down our polarization. We have to let go of the ideas that we hold about ourselves. First of all, we have to silence the excuses, the repetitive habits and patterns. And then when we find our center and are actually present in life, that is when we turn up the polarity. That is when you can start caring about world issues and you go beyond what you were originally willing to do, because now you see it with open eyes. You have more energy than you had before, and you're not going to fall into a manic-depressive cycle, even if the cyclical nature of things persists, because it's going to persist. You can take 1 step back and then take 1,000 steps forward. Mainly because being present to what is going on in the world is going to help you see that human beings, they're really broken, they're really destroyed. And you can restore the natural order. You have to. You don't have to. It is your job to restore the natural order. My job, your job, to restore the order, beauty, and wonder of the world by making the connections. Rebuilding the broken connections. Because people are broken. We want to heal those fractures, bring people closer, form connections. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's you being very intimately connected to other people and the world at large. And I'll end this episode with a quote. The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. That says it all right there. That's how we're going to leave it. My name is Konrad Rogoz. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you next week on This Week in Tyranny. And please check out the video I'm about to record. I don't know what title it is, but anyway, you know, it'll be there. Thanks so much. Enjoy. Tony Starr, my only dog. I can't see me without this iron. He said I ain't milk, he's lying. In front of me, run this flying. If I shoot.